We are going to move on to Alyson Gould with the Colorado Water Trust. Alyson was born and raised in Colorado. She lives on the Front Range, though we do like to claim her as a very important partner in the Yampa Basin. She got her JD from the University of Denver Stern College of Law, and she was in private practice before she became counsel for the Colorado Water Trust. And she's going to tell us a little bit about how we manage and plan for environmental flows in the Yampa River. Alyson, take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Nicole, and I'm glad to be claimed by the West Slope. All right, I'm gonna move into screen sharing if I can make that happen. All right. Okay, I think it's working. All right, so as Nicole mentioned, my name is Alyson Meyer Gould, and I am a staff attorney with the Colorado Water Trust. I will be presenting upon the current water management strategies used by the Water Trust and its partners in the Yampa River Basin. Before I get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Water Trust. We're a Denver-based nonprofit. We work statewide to restore flows to Colorado's rivers in need. We were formed in 2001 to partner with Colorado's in-stream flow program and amplify its work. We work with water users to put together voluntary transactions to benefit the environment. And we work within the prior appropriation system and compensate water users at a fair market value. This year is the Water Trust's 20th anniversary, and over the past 20 years, we've helped to restore about 13.5 billion gallons of water to about 589 miles of natural stream. All right. Moving into the presentation, I've broken it down into 3 parts. In the first part, I'm going to look at water management through the prism of the economic concepts of supply and demand. Then in part 2, I'll introduce the strategic reservoir releases, which is the mechanism that can be used to supplement water supply and thereby boost flows in the natural stream. And in part 3, I'll give an overview of the Water Trust's work in the Yampa Basin in the past, now, and looking towards the future. So supply and demand are concepts that are commonly used to explain the balance and often tension between what's available and what's needed. In the context of water, the vast majority of water supply comes from the sky in the form of snow and rain. And I'm sure we have a number of hydrometeorologists who know a lot more about this than I do. But in Colorado, about 80% of our stream flow comes in the form of snow and is stored over winter in our snowpack. The other 20% comes from rain and groundwater infiltration. As far as demand statewide, about 89% of water is estimated to be consumed in agriculture, and around 11% is estimated to be consumed by municipal and industrial purposes. However, not all uses are consumptive, and about 5.5% of the state's water is used non-consumptively for recreational and environmental purposes. In general, the trend on supply is decreasing, and I'm again sure that a lot of you folks know a lot more about that than I do. And on the other hand, demand is increasing. In the Yampa Basin specifically, one recent analysis anticipates that there may be an annual supply-demand gap by 2050 of about 4% or up to 4% for municipal and industrial use, and between 3 and 11% for agriculture, depending upon how things shake out as far as temperature and growth. Now let's take a closer look at supply. Supply in the water world is anything but constant, as you all know, and this is a simplified hydrograph that illustrates how stream flow could change over the course of a year. It starts out low when the stream flow is building up, can get high when it starts to run off and melt, and then again kind of balances out here with a couple of little bumps when there are precipitation events. So basically, at this point, we're back to this beginning. So let's compare this to a topic that I'm sure you all discussed in great detail yesterday, which is an example of where supply is limited by drought conditions. First, there's less snow, so there's less snowpack, so less runoff. What runoff there is then absorbed by parched soils before it reaches the stream. Rain events are smaller and less frequent, giving less relief in the hottest summer months. And overall, there's just less water in the stream. And while the stream may not totally dry out, it does get a lot closer than it would otherwise. All right, shifting gears, let's turn to demand. Here we have the original simplified hydrograph, but again, you'll note in a couple of places it dips down because of diversions of water out of the stream. For example, industrial in the winter for snowmaking, and in July and August, diversions for agriculture and municipal use. Like with the drought scenario, although the stream may not go completely dry at certain times of the year, it does dip pretty low. The other aspect of demand that's important to consider is location. Just because the flow drops low at one point in the stream doesn't necessarily mean it dips low everywhere. So here's an example of how this could happen. Take a flow of 100 CFS. First, there's a diversion of 60 CFS for municipal, leaving 40 in the stream. Next, there's a diversion of 20 for irrigation, and this leaves 20 in the stream. Below this location, return flow from the irrigation accrues to the stream, and treated water is discharged back to the stream. But above the return flows and below the diversions, the water can actually get pretty low and creates a low flow pinch point here. So consider for a minute what this location would look like in a drought scenario. Instead of 20 CFS in the river, it might dry up altogether. So with that table setting, as in economics, finding that balance between supply and demand can be tricky and sometimes involves a little intervention to get things back into balance. The same can be the case in water management, and sometimes active management can help mitigate circumstances that would otherwise be pretty dire. So the mechanism used by the Colorado Water Trust and its partners on the Yampa River is strategic reservoir releases, which serves to supplement the existing supply when and where it's needed. It's pretty simple and involves three basic steps. First, water is stored in an upstream reservoir, and when it's available, usually during runoff in early spring. Second, stream conditions are monitored as the season progresses. And finally, when flow gets dangerously low or river water temperatures get dangerously high, or both, which is often the case, water is released as needed from storage to boost the flows in the stream. Plugging this into the supply and the demand examples we just went through, the reservoir releases would be timed when the flow drops particularly low. And as far as location, the water is released upstream of the low flow pinch point so that the flow never drops as low within this reach as it would without the boost. In this example, we have an additional 20 CFS that is added to the stream, so the stream never drops below 40 CFS, transit losses aside. In a drought, such release might help avoid a dry up, or if supply allows, perhaps even more water could be released to the stream to boost flows even more. So now that we've discussed the concept of supplementing supply by strategic reservoir releases, I'd like to turn to how the Colorado Water Trust and its many partners have implemented this mechanism in the Yampa River. The Water Trust work in the Yampa began in 2012, and to date, most of our work has been focused on the upper Yampa River between Stagecoach Reservoir and the city of Steamboat. The figures in this slide focus on this location, specifically this area with the little blue star, which is the Yampa below the Stagecoach Reservoir, which is also pictured here. In collaboration with a number of partners, including the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District, the city of Steamboat, and the Colorado Water Conservation Board, the Water Trust has supplemented supply in the Upper Yampa in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2018, and 2020 for a grand total of just over 12,100 acre feet. Figure 1 shows the timing of these releases. As you can see, the amount, which is in red, is relatively small when compared to the overall hydrograph in blue. However, you will note that they are very strategically timed to try and keep the river from really bottoming out. Figure 2 can illustrate just how critical these releases actually were. This green line here is 50% of the river, and these are the releases made from Stagecoach Reservoir. At a number of times, the amount of water that was released from the reservoir actually got up to almost half of the flow in the river. turning to today, the Water Trust has carried on making reservoir releases this year and is actually making releases as we speak. The figures in this slide show some recent measurement that go into the Water Trust thinking when determining timing and rate of release from the reservoir. Figure 1 right here starts right below Stagecoach Reservoir, and this is pretty recent. As of yesterday, in combination with Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District, there is being released about 50 CFS from the reservoir. Figure 2, this one shows the water temperature in the river at Steamboat. And when the water temperature hangs out in the yellow and the red sections, the fish can get pretty uncomfortable because they are cold water species. When water is released from the reservoir, it can help to mitigate some of those temperatures, and also boosting the stream depth can help mitigate some of the detrimental effects to the fish. Figure 3 shows the flow rate of the river in Steamboat. For this figure, I find it helpful to recall the slide with the diagram with boosted flows, where the flow rate never got so low because of the boosted flows. So here you can kind of imagine that floating down here, and it's boosted up here, and it's currently between about 70 and about 50 CFS. Also notable in this diagram 3 is we have the median flow rate in Steamboat over the past 111 years. As you will note, it is considerably less, about 30 CFS less than the median flow rate is what we're looking at now, even with the boosted flows. So instead of looking at the past, let's actually look to the future and how the Water Trust envisions its work in the Yampa Basin going forward. The Water Trust has 4 overarching goals. First, we want to our work to try and adapt to changing conditions and new information. For example, figures 1 and 2 show illustrations from a new draft report that our moderator, Nicole Seltzer, will know more about. These figures show the Yampa River in the blue dots, and the colorful dots, pinks and oranges, show the places that the flow may be lower than the in-channel environmental targets for some portion of the year. The Water Trust would like to learn from this and other new information that is coming out and try to adapt our work in the Yampa Basin to meet some of these new, to address some of these new information. Second, the Water Trust would like to be really more holistic in its approach to the Yampa. To this point, most of our work has been focused on the Upper Yampa, but a river is a system, and as such, looking at it as a whole is one of our goals, and how we can try to boost flows in the lower part of the river is one thing that we're really trying to strive for. Third, boosting stream flow obviously benefits the organisms that live in the stream, but boosted stream flow also can have a wider benefit, and the Water Trust would really like to maximize the benefits to as many sectors in the basin as possible. Finally, we want to continue to work and innovate alongside our partners in the Yampa Basin. The Yampa Basin is a recognized leader across the state as far as community involvement and water management collaboration, as you just heard from the last presentation. It's also embraced and been on the cutting edge of putting into practice new legal mechanisms. We, along with a number of our partners, including the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District, the Yampa River Fund, Tri-State Generation and Transmission, and the Colorado River District, and many others, are continuing this transition and actively finding new ways to work together to push into new territories of collaborative water management. And so with that, I would like to thank you and turn it back over to Nicole.
Thanks, Alyson. That was a really great walkthrough of how the Water Trust can partner with the water management entities in the Yampa Basin in order to produce some environmental flow support, which is so important for our recreational economy. And it does provide other benefits as well. Having more water in the stream obviously is beneficial for everybody in terms of just moving water through the system. And the work with the Water Trust is so important. So thanks. Okay, we are going to turn our